How is everybody doing out there today? It's Miranda. It's been quite a while since we have seen each other. Months, as a matter of fact. I think the last video that I put out was the end of February, if I'm not mistaken. And here it is now August. Time does fly when you're having fun. So I hope you guys are all doing very well out there. I hope you've been enjoying summer. Um, yeah, I have been for the most part. Um, but I took some time off, from videos and everything. It just happens. I took some time off because honestly, I needed a break and I just needed to figure some things out, right? Um, my last round of videos were pretty deep. They were intense. Um, for me, it was the final unraveling of like all the doctrines that the church taught me, right, were true. It was just piece after piece just falling away, as all of those foundations were just systematically dismantled in my mind and my heart. And that's a really heavy thing when you think about it. Let's just make it clear. Deconstruction, it's more of a difficult and painful process than most people know or think. You know, it's contrary to popular belief. It's not just flippantly tossing aside morals and abandoning God, so I can go and do whatever I want. I can drink, I can swear, I can smoke, it has nothing to do with that. It's deeper than that. These doctrines and rituals become embedded into every fiber of our being. At least it did for me, right? Mind, body, heart, and soul. It becomes your identity. It's, who we are is becomes wrapped up in this lifestyle of beliefs, and so then being stripped of them is challenging to say the very least. And, I'd even go so far as to say agonizing at times. You want to talk about unnerving, when you come to see and realize that everything that you thought and believed was truth is man made, right? And especially where God is concerned, that's such a heavy, heavy thing, you know? And it's a very delicate operation of undoing, right? All of these foundations, all of these things that were like set in stone. It's a long, intricate, delicate process, you know? And during enduring it, there are times when you feel like you're free falling, that everything has been stripped away, so now what do? You can't help but wonder, what's real? What's true? Is anything? It leaves you floundering, to be certain. It leaves you feeling very unsure, right? This is your spiritual life we're talking about. Something that we're told is crucial and to protect and maintain, right? And now all of the ways that you were doing that, protecting and maintaining your spiritual life, they're now nullified, right? Or at the very least called into question, so where do you go from here? For years, I was told that I needed and required a spiritual gatekeeper to guide and direct me, right? Couldn't do it by myself. I needed a pastor. I needed a church. I needed a spiritual family. I needed a book that gave me all of my instructions, that was my spiritual food. I was taught that we needed all of these external things to have a relationship with God, to connect with Him, to be blessed, to grow. There's just so many stigmas attached to the whole thing, right? So then to undo it, to have it undone, to come out of it, to lay it aside, it is a massive, massive thing. It's painful, it's beautiful, it's liberating, it's terrifying, it's exciting, it's scary. You go through a roller coaster, a myriad of emotions, you know? And honestly, there are stages, especially kind of when you get to the tail end of it, when you're like, I'm in limbo. That's how I felt. That's where I was. That's you trying to reconcile where I was, where I came from, and then and what I used to believe with where I am now. So what exactly did I believe? And where did that leave me? Um, I've been trying to figure out what a genuine spiritual life could or should look like, right? Without rules, without boundaries or dogmas attached to it, without a book, without a pastor, without all of these things that were absolutely necessary before. Now that they're not, what do I do, right? Is there a right way to do it? A better way to do it? What works best for me? What do I want out of it? These are all of the questions that I've been mulling over in my mind. And as you can tell, I tend to be a bit of an overthinker. I know I've said that to you before. That's the way I operate. And so then you start searching, you start branching out, seeing what else is available. What else is there besides what I've known? And I was led down a few paths. There was quantum physics, heart brain coherence, meditation, visualization, our innate divinity, right? It's just embedded within us. There was some there were some great and interesting things that I learned, right? But honestly, they were more just like blips on the radar. It was good information and interesting knowledge to have. And that, it's workable, it's usable, right? Um, but then recently I was kind of taken down a path regarding reclaiming feminine energy. Again, this wasn't something that I was necessarily looking for, right? Or actively seeking after. This is honestly just the way that my journey has unraveled and played out. I swear to God, breadcrumbs get left, and this is what I find. This is where I go, you know? Um, but during this process, it actually got me to realize that a lot of, or actually all of my spirituality was really inspired by men, laid out by men, by male dominated theology and doctrines, right? That my life has been lived in strictly masculine energy for the most part. I realized that I had, in essence, buried that girl and that woman inside of me like a long time ago, right? Out of fear. She wasn't safe. That's all out of dysfunction and abuse and neglect. My story isn't really that much different from anybody else's. I can't think of like one person in my life that hasn't had some kind of dysfunction. We all share that story. The only thing that's different is, how we respond and how we live it out. And I tucked that girl away. I put her in this vault and buried her deep inside because she wasn't safe, right? And I lived from a masculine energy. And so I started to dive into that aspect, of myself, of my life, and asking, so what does this mean for my spiritual journey? How could or how does that look different in this new light? Um, and to be honest with you, those questions took me down a rabbit hole that was really surprising. um, I began to dig up and unearth the truth about women and their spiritual history. I was learning about things that were buried and kept hidden, about ancient cultures that for centuries actually worshiped women and goddesses and the female form. I learned that women were the ones that the people actually used to go to for healing and direction and advice. They were oracles and priestesses and mages and healers, you know, and this led to a deep dive on the persecution of witches, right, in the witch trials. And coming to find out that witches were really not actually these nasty, spurned, evil, wicked women casting spells over peoples and crops and towns, right? You want to talk about a shocker? They were These women were healers and midwives. They were seers, right? Herbalists, medicine women. And as I'm reading all of these texts and these historical things, I couldn't help but to think about how Christianity has totally twisted that narrative so badly. It created so much fear and superstition, right? Tossing around that word witchcraft, to keep people in fear and under their control, under their spell. But I digress. I won't be bitter or nasty about that. Anyways, so while reading some of these texts, I actually started to cry. I wept as it detailed the torment and torture that was inflicted upon these women, all for the sake of what? Money, control, religion, land grabs. This is what it's about. If you're interested, send me a message and I can give you some books to read, the ones that I've been reading. Very, very interesting, very intriguing. And needless to say, an extraordinary it's been an extraordinary journey, an extraordinary year so far, I have to say. After having all of that unraveling, right, with Christianity, and then turning and heading in this direction, I can honestly tell you that the me of 4 years ago would definitely have called me now a heretic. I can tell you that with absolute certainty, right? And so all of these things got me thinking, right? All of this stuff, everything that I've been reading and searching and thinking about, it's got me thinking about how we are all connected, right? Us, Earth, nature, right? And I've been reconnecting to that. I've been spending a lot of time outside, just sitting still, being quiet, listening, watching, appreciating, intentionally connecting to myself and what is around me, learning to be more present and tuned in. This is the turn that my spirituality has taken as of recently. Um, and in that, I started making my own cleaning products. I know that sounds a little strange, but it affects everything, right? Aside from the fact that they are non-toxic and all natural, right? It's also my way of giving the finger to mega corporations who mass produce toxic shit without a single care about how it affects us. All they're interested in is making money at our expense. These things not only affect me and you, but the earth, the planet, our crops, our water, the animals, the ecosystem. All of those things are full of poisonous ingredients, and they are just pumped and dumped into this and into us and into the world without a single care or thought for nature or humans. Absolutely sickening when you think about what is done and perpetuated, all for the sake of the almighty dollar. Um, I also began utilizing essential oils, making my own health and beauty products. And I'm going to tell you that they work better than the commercial stuff that's, full of chemicals and God only knows what, right? I can put them on and use them without worrying about any side effects, you know? But anyways, just to say that this is where I've been, since February. This is what I've been going through, what I've been up to. Um, it's been another transformational year, honestly, and I can say that I finally feel like myself. I feel plugged in. I can say with all honesty that I'm back. Because for a long time I wasn't me. I was trying to fit into a mold that wasn't meant for me. And in the process, I really wound up hurting myself in a lot of ways, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, even. I documented that in my last series. It was detrimental to my soul, really, is what it was. Um, my cat's going crazy because I have the door closed. Um, but I recently came to the place where all of the old religious program has finally been dissolved, right? And I feel like I had this watershed moment last month where this light just kind of came on, and the last of the fake me was totally removed. It was taken off, tossed aside, and I felt like I could see and breathe for the first time in a really, really long time. It was kind of almost instantaneous, really. And since then, I can honestly say I feel electric, alive, and happy and free and excited. I can't remember the last time I said that or felt that way, you know? I guess if anyone can take anything from what I'm saying here, from this message, if that's what you want to call it, it would be this: it is possible to be free. If you've been part of some cult or high control religion, or, if that was your life and your identity and you feel like you could never be free of it, or even, past torments and wounds and, dysfunction, any of that stuff, right? I want you to know that you can be. It's possible. You know, the prison door is unlocked, darlings. Just step out. And believe me, I do know, I understand that freedom can seem daunting for those of us who have lived a good portion of our lives in this manner, right? Told what to do, how to live, how to walk, talk, behave, and think by the world, by society, by parents, by right loved ones, or by religion, by a pastor, some master of puppets, some man up on a stage who claims to know and speak for God, but I promise you that's not the case. All he is doing is just repeating all that he has been taught and programmed to say. He's making a living off of fear and obedience. That's really most everybody. The world, the systems, the institutions, the corporations, all of them are living off of our fear, and that's what they prosper off of. Our fear and our obedience. Okay? Anyways, it's all just an energy trap. It's manipulation and spiritual vampirism. But maybe that's something that we'll talk about in our future videos. Um, Anyways, if you are new here, I recommend maybe watching my last series where I talk about and take apart all the doctrines of deconstruction and churchianity. It's unveiled deconstructing religion. Then we can just move forward because now you'll see where I'm at. But anyways, all of that being said, I just felt like it was time to pick up the videos again, to share what's on my mind and my heart, what I've been learning and realizing. Listen, I'm not here to influence you. I am not here to make you believe that I have it all right, that I figured it all out, that I have the answer to whatever dilemma you have. That's not my point or my purpose. It's not what I'm here for. There are too many others out there that who already do this. They're posing and pretending to be just that. Some spiritual guru, the I know it all, these influencers, and I'd be willing to bet that most of them are not as well put together as they portray. Because listen, no one has the answer. No one has it all right. We are all on a journey through life. Every single one of us. What works for one does not work for all. I've said it before, and I still stand by that. It is absolutely true. I am only here to share and inspire, to be transparent about my journeys and my struggles, what I've gone through, my revelations, where I am on my path. And maybe in the interim, you can relate. Maybe you can see yourself in something that I say. Maybe you are sparked into action or something wakes up inside of you. Whatever the case, I am not here to handhold you because you don't need it. You don't need anyone to be your spiritual gatekeeper. You only need yourself for that. Who knows you better than you? It's just time for you to start getting to know you. And that means unplugging from the system, from the program, from everything that the world has told you, from religion has told you, what other people have told you, and get to know yourself. Who are you? What do you love? What do you like? What are your passions? What are your desires? What do you want? Who do you want to be? These are the questions that you ask yourself in the stillness. And that's just what I've been doing. I'm still figuring things out. I'm not going to lie. I'll be totally honest with you. Still figuring things out. Are we ever going to get it all right here in this lifetime? I don't think so. So maybe for the time being, we can just figure things out together. Maybe we can just walk the same path for a moment or two. Keep each other company for a minute. And that's all it is. I also want to say I have a new book coming out. It's just being finished, wrapped up, and putting a bow on it. It's called Beyond the Veil, A Journey from Religion to Spirituality. And it will be due out before the month is over. So I'm hoping. And what this is, it's a continuation from my last book, The Deconstruction Diaries. And there'll be extra stuff in this one as well. So if you want to stay up to date on any of that, just head over to the website, mirandabrandt.com, or you can like, subscribe, share, comment. And like I said, I'll be starting the videos back up again. So thanks for stopping by. It was really good to see you again. If you're new here, nice to meet you. And until next time, this is Unapologetically Miranda saying, shine bright, my friends. Do not dim yourself for anyone. God bless, and I'll see you next time.